Hi, I'm Lucas Mack, and I'm on a mission to see the hurting get healed and the healed go out and heal others, in order for all of us to experience the true love and light we desire. This podcast is me sharing my journey with you, so you don't feel alone in your journey. Welcome to the Golden Rule Revolution. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another episode of the Golden Rule Revolution. I am Lucas Mack, and thank you for joining. And get ready for a really fun episode. As you've seen, I've had the pleasure of meeting an array of amazing and incredible people, and today is one of the people that tops, I think, the list. I had such a great time talking to Mack Cubbler. His story is so powerful, and he's an author. He is a police officer. He is a veteran military intelligence in the Army. He is a current police officer in Philadelphia. He is a really beautiful soul. He's a critical thinker, and I just loved talking to him, and I know you're going to love talking or hearing our conversation. And Matt, thank you for coming on. You're a blessing in my life, brother. And I'm excited for everyone to hear this episode. Man, thank you for coming on.
Dude, after our first meeting, and Aaron Scotty's our mutual friend, and
yes,
he's one of us. Like, yes, he's a truth seeker. He's somebody that literally is just searching for answers to everything. And if there's ever a word that described me, I'm always just, I'm in intelligence and a cop for 32 years. Like, I'm always searching for answers. Every day is a search for answers. And when we met, I was like, man, this dude is righteous. I like him. Then I had you on my show, and then what was it, an hour and 30-minute podcast, but we did 30 minutes before and an hour after. Like, it was a day.
It was awesome. I was like, that was amazing. 3 hours.
And my wife, I guess, had been texting me because she's like, are you ever coming down? Like, from my little cave here. And I finally came down. She goes, was that one podcast? I'm like, well, yes, but no. Like, It was a 3-hour conversation with an hour and a half recorded. So
that's
right.
It
was awesome, dude.
Yeah, I had so much fun. And, this concept of truth and seeking truth is so fun, because I've gone down routes I never thought ever in a million years that even when I was a journalist in TV, and I had heard of 9/11 truthers, and I was like dismissive of that stuff, even though there was other things like on the religious side that I knew there are conspiracies. I understand the plotting of that side, but I was like,
right.
And then the more I have this book, it's like a 1,000-page book, and the guy breaks basically every anomaly down from a jet disappearing and over the Atlantic to all the things. And that's what opened my mind. Like, wait a minute, how do we know anything? Oh, we hear it from someone else, be it the newsman or our friend, and we accept it as truth, and it starts to shape our worldview until information comes that we see firsthand. Like, this is, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just been fun, brother.
Well, I mean, real quick, I'm not sure what and I love your show, because you're like, this is what we're going to talk about. None of that. It's like, hey, record it. Fuck it. Let's go.
Here we are. Yeah, exactly.
And I love that, because mine is exactly the same way. And
yeah.
I had 2 kids one guy that I mentored, former pro football player, and then another kid that's younger than him, 11 years younger than him, that I've had influence on. And they're both, one's 25, one's 36, maybe, or 34. Both Division I football players, partners in a financial firm. I had them on my show yesterday, and they're like, so, I know that you've grown as a podcaster over the years, and you've increased your understanding of how to. I said, listen, I'm not gonna lie to you. My ability to talk to a camera has increased great, or talking to another person has been great, but the fucking show's the show. Like, it hasn't changed. I still ask one question and figure the fuck out as I go, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But for 9/11, people that don't know me in your audience, I was an air marshal, a United States Federal Air Marshal after 9/11. So that was a program that prior to 9/11, there was 33 sky marshals, they were called. And they flew basically from the East Coast or the West Coast internationally. There was no domestic flights where there was a sky marshal, which is essentially an armed law enforcement officer on a flight. So after 9/11, President Bush decides he's going to create the Air Marshal program that was the Sky Marshal program and turn it into a larger function. And 9/12, I applied for the job, and they hired around 4,000 out of about 1 million. I was one of those 4,000. Wow. And the reason why 9/11 hits home to me is I was so angry when I woke up that morning. I mean, I was on a SWAT team, and that morning we had done a drug search warrant, and I had just gotten to bed maybe an hour or two before the first plane hit. Long story short, I didn't really get any sleep that day because my phone kept blowing up, my house phone. This is when, I had a cell phone, but it was a Nokia, like this big. And, and everything was pagers. My pager's going off, and when you're on SWAT, you're on call all the time. So I'm like, Jesus Christ. And so you have to look at everything. So you never really get the rest. But what I realized when I became an air marshal is that every one of us that took up that oath to fight terrorism did it believing that what we were doing is based on the truth. That what happened on 9/11 was exactly as it was told, and that our mission was to stop it from happening again. And I'm like you, I didn't believe any of that nonsense about inside job or any of that stuff that was coming out, because I was a red, white, and blue bleeder, man. I didn't care. I was fighting for my country, and I would die for it. And I still am to this day, but I have a little bit more of an understanding of the motivators.
And the country that you're actually fighting for versus,
exactly. Yeah. Who's running that country.
Right.
And what I realized is that after a while, what was, and as the bureaucracy around the air marshals grew, the clearer the intentions became of what they were truly doing with us. And if that's truly what they were doing with us, then why was it being done that way? If the fact is we aren't stopping terrorism, right?
Right.
And what it became was very clear to me was that the big bureaucracy of government needed to have, and I call this the Macy's storefront window mannequins. That every day it would change. They would put a new mannequin up there with a new style of clothing that they wanted to attract people in to buy and make them feel like they were safe and happy and whatever the emotion you're trying to trigger. And it became like we were the window dressing for the flight industry. That we needed to regain the trust of the flying public. And we needed to do that to make them feel like that it's okay and safe to do so, when there really wasn't a threat to begin with.
Right.
A real threat that would quantify the response. And I had the same questions with COVID and a lot of other things, but we would be marched down in front of the entire passenger, sit in the, in the waiting area at their gate. And we would walk down, go to the boarding where they collect your ticket, wheeling our, suitcases down 5 minutes before. Flight crew already went down. Who are these two guys? People, it's like, if I'm a terrorist, I'm not getting on that flight because I just know two guys that don't look like us, that are dressed like agents, but trying to act like they're not agents.
Right.
Got just walked down the jetway 5 minutes before us and already sitting in their seat when we come on. Like, it's not rocket science.
Right.
I had moms come up to me and squeeze my arm and say, "Thank you for what you're doing. God bless." Like 90-year-old women. So we weren't there to stop terrorism or to have a mid-air gun battle, right? We were there to make people feel safe. And I'm okay. I did it. I was okay. But if that's what the person flying needed, I was okay to be that. But it made me really understand the overall global picture of what actually happened. Because if people came to America, got flight training lessons, took a bunch of box cutters, got on 3 different airplanes, hijacked those planes, flew 4 airplanes, flew 2 into World Trade Center, 1 in the Pentagon, and 1 crashed in the middle of Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Right.
If all of that happened the way they're saying it happened, then my ass should have been as covert is. Yep. And they would have never known I was on that plane because our training said that's how good we were. Like we were the baddest motherfuckers on the planet when it came to shooting. I could shoot at 37,000 feet with confidence, knowing I was going to put one in your coconut and not into the electrical system of the airplane. Like I was pretty good with that.
Yeah.
But what it became was a window dressing. And that's a microcosm of how our government operates.
Yeah. It's a psychological, I always wondered, the Bible says the battle, take every thought captive. That's the verse. Take every thought captive. And I've always, when you're in a psychological warfare, you're the recipient of psychological operations, as Christianity is essentially. You create sheep and you tell the sheep, if you go outside of this wall, you are bad sheep. You are a bad person. That's a psychological operation. Although the text that we purport as truth says, take every thought captive. Why? Because if they can control our thoughts dictate our behavior, dictate everything from there. So this grand psychological operation that's been taking place on the planet forever, finally there's some glitches in the matrix. It's like that cat went by twice. You're like, wait a minute. Yeah. What just happened? And people are having, my brother's talked about it a lot, like deja vu has been increasing. People are deja vu is like out of, like off the charts for some people, or the ringing in their ears has been going off, and people start finding out like what's going on, and that's the frequency of the planet's actually raising, and all these things are changing.
I'm chewing gum because I have such bad GERD. I've had GERD for about, I don't know, a year and a half, like crazy, like clear my throat every 2 seconds kind of GERD.
All these,
that's one of the symptoms they're saying of the
ascension. Yeah. Yes. It's so fascinating. And it wasn't until something happened to us that we're like, wait a minute, this is this anomaly, or this, if I feel safe, what is this concept of safety anyway? I don't even understand. Like, we just went through a windstorm that was the worst that this area had ever seen. We live with a lot of trees around us, and I barely slept. Like, is a tree going to hit our house? Because our tree fell on our neighbor's house last year and crushed a whole bedroom. And we had boughs banging on our house all night long. And I thought, this could happen at any time. What is safety? I was laying in bed like, what makes me feel safe?
The absence of fear. That's it. It's like if there's nothing in your life that makes you feel afraid at that moment, it's this unwritten safety rule.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's subconsciously going, oh, everything's at peace around me, when it could be all fucking chaos everywhere.
Yes.
You just you're not feeling it yet.
Exactly right. And then people say, why, that's where the ignorance is bliss. And like, is it bliss? I don't know. Like what is true bliss is knowing that you saw and you overcame. Like that's like, that to me is bliss. But this pseudo bliss of like, well, if I just don't see, it doesn't exist type thing. It's like, well, you're not living. You're not free. You're not, I think, like, I live in Seattle. This is a pioneer town, gold rush, savages like coming across to the Rocky Mountains, the Cascade Mountains to get here. There's just tough people to this point now where we're like the movie. What's the movie that Pixar came out with the robot and all the humans are fat?
Yeah, iRobot. Yeah.
Is it iRobot or something? Yeah. It's like,
no, iRobot was Will Smith or something. I know the movie you're talking about.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, that's where they want to take us. And we're waking up from that, but that's fascinating that you were air marshal too. So let's back up. Let's go to your story now. Cause I think, I've reflected a lot about our conversation and just your life. And first of all, I just loved our time. I love the podcast. Yeah, I was just like, I got out of there. Like, I felt like I was in a time warp too. I was like, man, that was so cool. But share where you grew up and your life up to this point, brother.
Well, first of all, thanks again, man. Anytime I get a chance to just share life with somebody, even though we're not physically in the same place, we're connected through this amazing technology. And I know that our brains and hearts are in the same spot and we can feel each other through the screen.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to be 50 in 2 months, and I'm excited about that because I never fucking thought I'd be 50. Like I really never thought I'd get here. We've talked about my dream that I die at 53. I've had my whole life, and I loved your perspective on that. But for me, growing up on the East Coast, in a suburb, in a little city outside of Philadelphia called Pottstown, and my dad and mom got divorced when I was 9 months old.
Wow.
And my biological father, who I haven't seen since I was 25. And I wrote about this extensively in my book. A little plug here.
Yes.
A Brother's Love, a Memoir, is the book I wrote 14 years ago about my brother and I, my brother Andy. But anyways, growing up in a single parent family, especially when the mom is the workhorse, the provider, the leader of the family, it's different. Having two boys and a single mom in the 1970s, early 70s is just a different way of growing up than maybe others had. And my influence was a woman. So I'm an emotional guy. I'm very connected emotionally because of my mom. My mom loves harder than any human being on the planet. And she's got this superpower. I tell her all the time. All she has to do is look you in the eye and touch any part of your body, your hand, your thigh, and she can make anybody cry.
Wow.
Like emotionally, just go to some place in their heart where like emotion just come out. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. You're goddamn superwoman.
That's cool.
And people are like, don't look her in the eye. Don't look her in the eye. Like, so, but growing up, my brother Andy was older. He's almost 3 years older, and he was autistic by today's standard. Back then, he was just considered mentally retarded. Had a severe stutter, so much so that his eyes would roll into his head, his face would contort, and it was every word. It wasn't like he got hung up on P's or T's or S's. It was just formulating any sentence. So I had to learn to grow up a little bit quicker than most kids because my older brother wasn't necessarily the older brother. On top of the fact we were poor as shit and lived in low-income housing, and my mom worked 3 jobs, so we were alone a lot. Back then, it wasn't uncommon to have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old alone. Yeah. And we had babysitters, Daryl Hall and Oates.
Really?
His mom was my babysitter till I was about 6.
Wow. That's awesome.
He's from Pottstown, so
that's cool.
He's a hometown hero. But his mom, was my babysitter. That's my claim to fame for him.
Wow.
But so I had this like tribe of people that raised me, and to this day, that's say 47 years ago when I started remembering things. And one of them, was a lesbian hippie who taught me how to play Leaving on a Jet Plane on the acoustic guitar.
Wow.
We had next door neighbors in the one project we lived in. It was like the modern day Jack Tripper and Three's Company, right? So
that's awesome.
And I think there was some weird sex shit happening there, but lots of weed. And we would go there after school, and there'd be the bong on the table and the penthouse and the Playboys laying out. And it was but they protected us. So I got involved. I got around a lot of different types of people. We had a lady next door to us on the other side was this black older woman who made liver and onions. And to this day, I'll never eat liver and onions. But she would force us to eat liver and onions because my mom was at work. Wow. And she would tell my mom she'd make us dinner. So like all these like weird people, weird meaning like obscure, that are in your life at certain periods of your life that at the time you don't really recognize their value. But over time, especially when you go and write your life story over again, you get to relive your life, and all of a sudden these faces and names start to pop back up, and you're like, holy shit, that's where I learned that, or I remember that, and that's why I do this. And it's just amazing to relive your life a second time. If you ever get a chance to do that, please do. I was a very intelligent young man. I was 5'4" in 9th grade. I'm 6'3", 250 now.
Wow.
So I was this short little spark plug my whole life, and I got picked on for being short and smart, and on top of having to protect my brother who was getting picked on every day and getting into fights. And but then I sprouted up and never actually got any athletic ability. I played baseball and basketball, but it was never any really excelled at it because I never really tried. And I learned after reliving my life writing the book that I was a smoke and mirrors kid. That my entire life was built around how do I find the easiest path to success and make it look like I knew what I was doing. I got away with being smart enough to know how to manipulate the system to my advantage. I never took a book home ever in high school, not once, never studied for a single thing. I would take the period before every test, study during that class, could still listen to what the teacher was saying. I could multitask. I have pretty good photographic memory. And I would go and I would take that test, dump all the information I just memorized, and have no knowledge. Like I didn't retain anything.
Right.
I just learned the system. And then I realized that I hated being broke. So I started working from 8th grade on. I worked 40 hours a week every year of my life since 8th grade. And because I like to have the financial ability to do things. And I didn't want to have, I wore hand-me-downs. We got stuff from the Goodwill. It was never any new clothes. Nothing was ever in style. And, my mom bought my sneakers at the grocery store in the bin. They looked like Chuck Taylors, but they weren't Chuck Taylors. They were Bobos.
Right.
And, but my mom worked her ass off just to get us that. And I always recognized that. I always recognized that my mom was our leader and that she was the most loving, caring, hardworking person. And she was my example. And I always knew that. Didn't always follow it, but I always knew that. She got remarried to my stepdad, who became a pastor. Wow. He was talk about getting sold a different bag of goods. My stepdad was a drummer in a rock band, and they had a pretty well-known rock band in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s in the Philadelphia area. And I thought my mom was marrying a rock star.
Wow.
Didn't that son of a bitch get a calling? Right? I always bust his balls. I'm like, was it like in a shower? Like, when did God come to you?
Yeah, that's good.
And how did that happen? Let's discuss that.
Right.
Because I was really digging the drummer guy.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he took a hard 180.
Oh, that's
went a whole different route, right?
Awesome.
So, and that was different because I was having my biological father was pretty much non-existent. So, and every young boy needs a dad, needs a male person in their life that is, a strong example.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that. And my stepdad tried to be that, but I was still hung up on, I wanted my dad to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
I needed that. And I didn't want him to be that guy because that meant my dad couldn't be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I waited 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 and it never came. And that caused me to have a lot of stress, emotional stress. I had my first bleeding ulcer when I was 15 from taking aspirin for migraines every day. I ate through the wall of my duodenal. And then I had another one when I was 16. Nearly died from the one. My white blood cell, I think it's the white, was at 6, which is super low apparently.
Right.
But I learned that I was a warrior in life, that I was able to always solve problems, even if I cheated through it or I backdoored it or did the end around or whatever. I always found a solution, but I didn't always work hard at that solution. So, but working, and that as a play on words, when I went to work at my job, I worked hard because to me, there was a reward for that. If I worked hard, I'd get a raise. If I get a raise, I made more money. If I made more money, I had more independence. Like I saw the path for that. But going to school was just simply a process. Like, all right, I have to be here.
Right.
Might as well get good grades because then nobody bothers me. And it was easy. Like I didn't have a struggle with it. So, but then there was like this, I've been a cop for 28 years. I've been serving for 32, if you include 4 years in the Army. There's a moment in time where I actually thought I was going to be a criminal, like a lifelong criminal. Like there was something about that world that I was always fascinated by. So I started my own hall pass forgery business in high school. I learned how to forge signatures because I used to forge my mom's and stuff all the time. And I just really learned how to, like, again, that photographic memory. I could remember a signature and just practice all day until I got it right, to the point where teachers didn't even know they didn't sign it. And people were paying me $2 a hall pass. They were late for a class, whatever. They'd come and knock on the door. I'd sign them a hall pass and collect my money. I had a term paper writing business. I could bullshit better than anybody. And I knew what an A bullshit paper looked like, and a B bullshit paper, and a C bullshit paper. And I would charge 50, 75, or 100. And I could call my grade. Like I was like Babe Ruth of term papers. And I would call my shot. I'm like, what do you want? They're like, I need a C. I'm like, you sure you don't want a B? They're like, I've never written a B in my life. I'm like, all right, we'll stay C. And I'd write them a C paper.
Wow.
And I never had anybody come back and say, you fucked me. You gave me an A when I called for a B. I knew just where that line on the grading system was. And then I had a small marijuana operation and really enjoyed that. I loved smoking it. I enjoyed the way it made me feel, and made me feel like I was escaping, because alcohol, there's so many. I smoked cigarettes since I was 9. So I smoked Newports, which have an odd, like the after effects of a Newport cigarette smells eerily like marijuana, like a day later. So if I'd smoking on my clothes, it wasn't a surprise. But if I had come up smelling like alcohol, which happened one time, I got my ass beat. I'm like, well, I'm never doing that again. I'm just going to keep smoking pot. Yeah. But I went through this whole discovery process of who am I? Never really knowing who I am, but I saw that I had all these different interests and capabilities, but I hadn't honed in on anything yet. And I was starting to really figure it out, because I had gotten an appointment to the United States Coast Guard Academy. And I did that because I knew that that's what I should be doing. Like that was if everybody wrote my script, that's what I should be doing. But I go back to the fact that I was a smoke and mirrors kid. And I didn't know how to study, and I didn't know how to prepare, and I didn't know how to stay organized. And had I gone to the Coast Guard Academy, I would have been exposed quickly and severely. So on my 18th birthday, I enlisted in the Army. And around my 18th birthday. And I didn't know at the time, because I did it sort of as an independence move. Like I can do this because I'm 18. But I didn't know that it negated my commitment to the Coast Guard Academy. Like an enlistment trumps, no pun intended, any of the anything else. Like that's gold. So I went off into the Army. But a month before I left in the Army, my brother was killed in a car accident. So everything that I just explained to you about how I was all over the place and I didn't have any focus or purpose, but I was learning about myself, but I hadn't really brought any of it into a productive place. That completely went to shit even more when my brother died. And I went into like a 13-year period of depression and anger management issues and unbelievable risk-taking choices. All the while, serving my country, doing very, very well. On paper, just like I did life, it looked like I had my shit together. I had all the things, all the boxes were being checked, getting awards and getting this and recognized for this and delivering a baby and surviving a tornado and all the things that people are like, man, this dude's a fucking rock star. But behind the curtain, I was a shit show. And I met my wife, who's fucking rock. I love her. She's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I knew the minute I saw her, she was the one I was going to marry. And even knowing that she was the one I was going to marry, I couldn't love her. And I don't know, and I'm sure, and I know your story, you have been in that type of an environment in your own heart when you can't, and you can't. So it's not like you can't and you're oblivious to it. Like I truly knew that something was not right. But I had a strong enough brain and moral conviction to understand that this is right. Like she is the one. You may not figure it out yet, or you may not appreciate it yet, but she's definitely the one. And thankfully she said yes. We got married, and we got pregnant shortly after we got married, and we had our daughter. And then it really hit home after we had her. And it actually magnified my insecurity, my anger, my lack of trust, my inability to love, having a baby with a marriage. Because the marriage, we could figure it out because there was always sex, right? There's something you could always go back to, and it was like, let's have sex.
Yeah.
And then you felt connected, and in that moment, it was great. and you felt like she loved you and you loved her, and it was this replacement for what truly love is, which is that emotional connection that doesn't require that, right? That my love for my wife is independent of that.
Yep.
But I didn't have that. And then you throw in a baby who was premature and just colicky and never slept, and you couldn't have dinner without one walking around with her while the other one ate and swapping, and like it was just chaos. And that magnified my life, the chaos in my life. And it was bad. I mean, I had a lot of really bad negative thoughts at the same time going, why the fuck can't you love your wife and kid?
Yep.
And that lasted until 2002. So my brother died in 1989. And that cycle of shit that I was living in lasted until 2002 when my son was born. And I'd already become an air marshal by then. And I don't know how much you want me to continue on with this story, but I can go into the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah, no, it's great.
So I didn't want another kid because my fear was I was going to fuck it up just like I did the first time. I told my wife that. I said, I don't know if our marriage or my life can survive going through that process. Because now my daughter's 5. Things were changing as far as her relationship with me. She wasn't something I needed to care for every second of every day. She was doing stuff. We could talk. Like there was a little bit more connectivity there. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that again. And I prayed, and I didn't pray a lot back then, but I knew that I was lost. And something said it's going to be okay. And I said to my wife, I said, I think we're going to be all right. Let's do it. So we did. And she got pregnant right before I got the word I got hired by the Air Marshals. And so I'd left for training while she was pregnant in the middle of godforsaken nowhere outside of Roswell, New Mexico, and left for 4 months and came back 2 months before she was due. We had my son, and I tell people this because when you go from living in a home where your mother is like the emotional God, right? Yeah. There isn't an emotion. My mom, we had the greatest, we lived in a house where you could say fuck.
That's great.
But as long as I wasn't saying fuck you to someone, like I could say, I can't fucking believe it, Mom. This happened today. Perfectly okay. But if I say, you know what, fuck you, Mom, boom. like a wooden spoon or a shoe, something would be flying.
Yeah.
But my mom, and she taught me this, and she loved harder than she disciplined. And I always kept that balance. Like I'm a disciplinarian. I'm a hard ass when it comes to my expectations for my family and my kids.
Yeah.
But I always keep that balance that I will always love harder than I discipline. And my mom taught me that there was never anything that I could do that would keep her from loving me that hard. As long as that knowledge is there with your family, like they know there's going to be disappointment, there's going to be letdowns, there's going to be things that you do that I'm not happy with, but I will never not love you harder than anything else on the planet. And I always maintain that, I think, somewhere in that recess of anger and hate and mistrust and being pissed at God during that 13-year period. In there was that memory that my mom had implanted in my heart. And when my son was born, it was weird. Like when my daughter was born, it was a process. Like pregnant, scream, rub back, push, baby, clean it up. I don't want to touch it till it's right. That thing don't look human. I don't want it yet.
Yeah.
With my son, it was like, holy fuck. And I saw him, and I remember I'm going to start crying. But when I saw him, it was like I saw a mirror. And it looked familiar. And that was when, like, this little flicker, it wasn't there yet, but like I felt this, like when you're priming an engine for the first time, right? That's been sitting there for 13 years, never been started, and you're trying to get it to start. That's what that was. And over the course of the next couple months, I really started to have these moments where I could just feel a little bit of like relief in my heart. And And then one day my wife's like, I'm going to have family and friends over to see the baby, and they want to bring stuff over and all that. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. And my grandmother came, my grandfather, and a couple cousins, friends of my wife, and there's probably 20 people there. And typically in those situations, you have 3 kids, and right, and you're not typically in the room when the onesies and binkies and blankets are being opened, and there's usually something else happening in the kitchen where there's beer or football or something.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was expecting to be there in the kitchen, and I get told I got to be in the room when they're opening gifts. So my grandmother, who's my stepfather's mother, by this time, both my maternal and paternal grandparents had passed. And my nan is like the female version of me. Like, she's a no nonsense. Like, if she tells you to do something, you have one choice.
Yeah.
That's yes.
Yeah.
And she hands me this box, and she says, open it. And I open it, and inside is this yellow, white, blue like a paisley type stuff, and 2 teddy bears, and I look, and it's a quilt. I'm like, pull this bitch back up. I said, man, I'm pretty sure this wasn't for me. She gives me that face. She goes, Matthew Jonathan, look at it. And I went, yes, ma'am. Open it up, and I start to look at it. And then in my head, I'm going, what am I, like, the process I'm going, I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at? What am I looking at?
What am I?
Like, I'm hiding my face from her, right?
Yeah. Like,
I'm going to look at this son of a bitch till I figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that hit me was, there was, on the one teddy bear, there was like a work shirt embroidered Andy. And it was brown teddy bear and gold lettering. And I remember my brother worked at it was like an old folks home kind of place, assisted living kind of place. And he was a janitor, and buff floors, change light bulbs, whatever. And he had a brown work shirt, and I remember the gold Andy stitching. And then all of a sudden, all the other colors and prints made sense. And it was like the blue paisley. My brother always had a blue bandana. He was like a snot rocket bandana, right? Like, that was, my grandfather taught him, every gentleman has a bandana in case you don't have tissues, right? And I was like, that's so disgusting. Like, why would you keep blowing your nose into something that's got like hard snot in it, right? Like, I always thought that was odd, but my brother took that to heart, and he always had a blue bandana. And then, the browns was the brown work shirt, and the yellow was, I remember my mom at Easter that year, she always matched us. So it'd always be like, if he had a yellow shirt and a light blue vest, I had a light blue shirt and a yellow vest. Like, it was always inversed, right? And the yellow shirt was his Easter shirt, and the white was his t-shirts, and because I always wore a t-shirt under every shirt. And then I realized I was holding my brother. Like, everything that my brother had was here. And my grandmother had said that she had kept his clothes, because the week my brother died, my parents went away on vacation. And we were there down on the beach in Delaware. And then I had come home, I had to work, my brother had to work, and my mom and stepdad stayed down for another week. So my brother was staying with my grandmother, and I was staying with friends, and she was doing his laundry the week he died. And for whatever reason, she kept his clothes in like a Ziploc airtight bag for 13 years. And for whatever reason, I don't know why she didn't give it to me when my daughter was born. I don't know how she knew I was going to have a son, name him after my brother. Like, I don't know what God did for my grandmother to make this happen. But receiving a piece of my brother was the first thing I've ever had in 13 years that was his, that I could touch and hold and smell. And I swear to God, I could smell him every time I touched it. And it was one of the most emotionally impactful moments of my life. So I excused myself, and I went down to my office. I lived in a different house, and I had an office downstairs in the basement. And it was probably 8:30 at night when I went down, and I didn't come back up till 7:30 the next morning. And during that period of time, I cried and I typed. I cried and I typed. And I had this wave of emotions and memories come like flowing through me. And every time I had a memory, I would just write out the memory. And I've always been a writer, but I never wrote like this. Like I could write a term paper or whatever, but I was never much of a writer just to write. There always had to be a reason.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, God needed me to get this out. And that night I held on to that quilt and I wrote 26,000 words of memories in one night. And I came up the next morning, and when the basement door opens up, there's a kitchen window, and from that kitchen window was the east. So the sunrise would come through that window. And I remember when I opened the door, it was almost like blinding, the light. Like I was just like taken aback by how bright the light was. And the way it came across was like on a diagonal from where the door opened up, and I could see into my living room, but I could see every color in the rainbow in the light and like the little flecks of dust. And I was like in a trance, and I just kept remembering, like, I've come up from this basement, I don't know how many times, and I've come down from upstairs and seen light come in the window, but I never paid attention to it. But this light was so ungodly bright and colorful that I remember thinking, why have I never seen that? And literally when I got done looking at that light, I felt this, I don't know, it was like a release, like everything just sort of fell off me. And I felt lighter and I felt great. And my wife came downstairs. She goes, "Did you spend the whole night down there?" I said, "I did." She goes, "What did you do?" I said, "I wrote." She goes, "What did you write?" I said, "Memories about Andy." I couldn't stop. Like they just kept coming like a waves. And when people read my book, those 26,000 words are very prominent in that book because they were written at the most vulnerable, emotional, broken period ever. Like I let go, I grieved, like full on hardcore grieving that night. And because I hadn't since he died, I never grieved. I never came to terms with the reality that he would never be there again. I was just so fucking angry and pissed off at God. And I think I told you this after we recorded the podcast, that, you know, when you relive your life and you get to write it out, it gives you perspective. And what I was angry about the most, there were two things. Number one, my purpose in life was to protect my brother. Like I always knew that that's just what I was going to do for the rest of my life. That wherever I was, he was. That was it. So I lost that. And I think I searched for that purpose by doing the service world as intentionally as I did, and as passionately as I did, and as risk-takingly as I did, because I was trying to fulfill that missing purpose by saving the world or saving, you know, there's always this missing, like I felt like I always needed to be the one that went in first to a hostage negotiation scene or whatever. Like I was always the first one in because I was the one that needed, like it was so burning inside of me that I needed to fill. It was like drugs. I needed to find a way to fill that again. And I never did. Like it just kept coming up empty. So that was one of the things. And then the second thing was I thought my brother, who had suffered so long, you know, he was 21 when he died, and he never once had a kid call our house and say, "Can Andy come out and play?" Or he never got a birthday invitation or a Valentine's card, or like nothing ever happened to him that said, "I appreciate you," or "I like you," or "You're my friend," to anyone outside of me and my circle of people that took care of him. And he was just starting to figure it out. Like he had just gotten that job. He was working. He was driving a car. All the things they said he couldn't do, he did. And I'm like, he's finally starting to figure it out. And then he's taken from me. And I'm like, how fucking fair is that? Like, I did all this stupid shit I talked about earlier.
Right.
I faked it until I made it for 18 years. If anybody needed to go, it was me. Like, if God's picking between the two brothers, the Cain and the Abel, it's like, shit, you should have took me. And I was so angry that he didn't. And then when I wrote the book, it made me realize that my brother had another life for 4 years that I really never gave any context to because I wasn't part of it. So I never really thought about it. My brother from the time he was, I would say 16 until 20. He worked in the summers at a camp, a Christian camp, where he would do grass cutting and trim hedges and whatnot. And he would stay there, come home on the weekends, do laundry and stuff. But for the most part, he was there. But I didn't know these people. I didn't interact with any of them. I didn't know the other counselors or people that worked on the staff or any of the kids that came. But after I wrote the book, and people started to realize that I wrote this book, and it was, email was about the best you could do as far as faster communications and sending a letter or a phone call. And I sent a couple emails out saying, hey, I wrote this book, and I sent one to the camp where my brother worked and said, I'd love to come and talk to the staff. And if anybody knew Andy, it'd be great to just catch up with them. And in the meantime, they built a gymnasium in my brother's name there at the camp. And, that was amazing. But even then, I didn't recognize what that meant. Like, what does building a fucking gymnasium and naming it after another human being, like, how big is that? Like, I thought it was awesome, but I didn't really appreciate the why. Like, why would somebody do that? Until I wrote this book, and people would come to me at book signings and when I was at the camp on different events, like, your brother was the most important person in my life at that time. Like, I was a camper, and every time that I came to camp every summer for 4 years, I would always look out for your brother, and he would always have a smile and thumbs up. And, that kind of, the stories, one woman named her son after him. I mean, when you think about how someone who suffered and never had a friend, never had a birthday party, literally not one, where someone who wasn't related to him didn't come. That was someone that wasn't there, that had to be there, would come. And you think about that, and you feel sorry for him. And then you find out he had a completely different life that for 4 years you knew nothing about. And he touched so many lives and impacted so many people and had so many friends. And I realized after 13 years of being fucking pissed off that my brother never had a chance to live, that I realized he lived more than anybody. And the number of lives he impacted is more than I could ever fathom impacting. And still to this day, this book sells, and somebody else say, I never even knew, are you Andy Cubbler's brother? And I'm like, I never. And my brother, sorry. My brother would carry a picture of me. And like when you're trying to pick up a girl, you have a line. When my brother would meet somebody new, he would lead with, do you want to see a picture of my brother? Haven't thought of that in a long time. Thanks, dude.
No, man, thank you. And one of my closest friends, his sister is Downs, and he was telling me that my buddy's dad, who's in his 60s, says, I'm perfectly fine believing Jesus was Downs. He had no form that people looked upon. No one thought he was attractive. Writes in Isaiah 53 what he looked like, and was nothing special to look upon. And I think, man, Jesus has been amongst us in the form of all these people that we discard, who that's love, and it's unconditional. That's incredible.
So yeah,
incredible.
That was my brother, and I'm looking at his picture now, and after I let that go, that anger, my life changed. And while I was successful on paper, I wasn't happy, and I wasn't I had no joy. And I started to feel those things, and I was able to feel that from my wife and my daughter and my son and other people, and share that. And sharing my brother's story was my therapy, and it was something others could hold on to when they were suffering with something traumatic. Didn't have to be the same story, but if they could see how I was able to overcome it and how I was able to turn it into a positive and share it openly, then maybe that would give them some hope in dealing with their problems or their trauma. And it's become that, and it's turned into so many different, it's taken so many different forms. I thought I was just going to write a book and share his story. And then people were asking me to speak, and then I became a speaker. And then, people wanted me to change who I was as a speaker, and they wanted me to change the book. And they're like, we could take this book and turn it into a #1 bestseller if we would just change this or add that or remove this. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck all that.
Yeah.
I don't want any of that. I want this to be the single greatest legacy I've ever created in its current form permanently. This will never be altered.
Right.
And because it saved my life, why would I change that?
Right. Solomon wrote that a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. And Andy chose a good name.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking while you're talking about the building, the gym, the 3 deaths in Mexico, they talk about the 3 deaths. The first death is when a child first learns that they will die. The second death is when the body physically dies. And the third death is when the last time your name is ever spoken.
I've heard that.
Powerful. And your brother's going to outlive
forever.
Yeah, he's going to live forever.
And it's funny when he died, and the beautiful part about memories are that they're there when you need them. Right. I remember when my brother died, I tried to kill myself by taking a bottle of aspirin, of all things. The thing that gave me 2 ulcers. I decided I'm going to take the whole goddamn bottle. And anyways, I ended up being on some medicine to sort of calm me down. And at the funeral, I remember I was in a kind of a haze. My stepfather, it was his church, and as much as my stepdad and I sometimes butt heads, and we butted heads over the years, no one should ever have to bury their own son. And then preside over the service. I can't imagine the courage it took to do that. But I remember sitting in the crowd, looking around, angry, in a haze, and the church was packed. And it's a big church. It probably holds 1,500 people.
Wow.
And the line was outside. People couldn't come in. There was 1,000 people at least at my brother's funeral. And I just remember, and it's just amazing how when you're blocked off, when you can't process, when you're just so angry and you can't see what's right in front of you, and that have so many translations to today. But when you can't see what's right in front of you and process it, I couldn't process the number of people that were there, because the only thing I could think of was like, who the fuck are all these people? And why are they here for my brother's funeral? Like, how did they know him? I don't know who you are. If you don't know them, if I don't know who you are, you sure shit don't know my brother. Like, in my head, I was so small-minded into my brother's life and my access to his life and understanding of his life. All I knew is that I was his keeper and he needed me. And that was the small little world we lived in. And I didn't know who he was. And it pissed me. I'm not gonna lie. When I realized how important my brother's life was to many other people, my first reaction was, fuck, motherfucker. How come I didn't know that? Like, why wasn't I given that brother? Like, why wasn't I exposed to the Andy that was just in his own element and calm and relaxed and happy and joyful and not stuttering as much and like all those things? Like, why the fuck wasn't I privy to that guy? But then I thought, thank God he was that guy. Like, thank God he got to be that person and impact those lives. And the more I thought about it, the more he was that guy. I just didn't look at him that way. He was always in need to me. And I don't know if that was my own ego and my own hubris. I don't know what caused that. I was a kid. But I'm so thankful that that was revealed to me so that I could grow from that and identify it if it happens again in me or in my family, or like my expectations in life aren't so small-minded anymore. That my view of a person, of who they appear to be, I've learned that I have to look deeper and expect that there's more layers, and that what you're showing isn't necessarily the full context of who you are and what you have to offer. And it's made relationships. And I'm not necessarily a people person. Being a cop for as long as I have, solving problems is getting old. And I feel like sometimes that's all I'm asked to do is fix things and not experience or share or be happy. There are those rare moments like delivering a baby in the front seat of a Toyota on a cold December morning in 2012. Those are great moments. But there's 500 negative ones.
Right.
And so sometimes it's tough to see those joyful moments and hold on to them in order to keep everything in context. But I've learned to never simply just accept. And I think that's why we are who we are as far as truth seekers.
Right.
That the first layer is never the one I'm looking at. I'm looking at for the 100th layer. Because my brother was so deep of a human, and that I missed out on identifying that during the times that we had together, that now in his death, I can be honest with myself that I didn't see those things and have my moments of sadness because I didn't, but then also celebrate the joy of the fact that he did have all those layers.
It is, speaking to you, but also everyone listening, like, it is okay to be sad. It is okay to grieve. There's so many people that have yet to grieve, and just, it's fucking sad. It's fucking sad. When I can't hear that song, maybe Little Big Town, I don't even know. I can see the two guys and the two gals, but they sing "I Wish You Was a Better Man." I can't listen to that song.
Right.
I cannot listen to it. Like the one verse, and I just fucking just, and it's okay. And I've been learned it's okay to just be sad. It's okay to grieve. Because I think then that's where we get gratitude, is maybe we just aren't grateful because we haven't allowed that to feel the bottom, so that we know where the bottom is, to like, well, okay, I'm not at the bottom anymore. I'm here, wherever we are. Yeah. I'm thankful you share your story. I'm thankful that you honor his legacy through sharing your sadness.
And I think, and I just had this conversation, a friend of mine, my wife's best friend, lost her father Christmas Eve. And she's like a sister to me, and her kids are my nieces and nephews, and we're the godparents to almost all of them. And trying to explain to her, and she's never had trauma. Like she said, a grandfather died, but he was 99 or whatever. Like there's never been this like kick in the face moment. Yeah. And I told my kids, my own kids, I'm like, you should feel blessed that my daughter's going to be 23, my son's 18, and they've suffered trauma. And I said, absent, and you said it right, until you know where the bottom is, you keep thinking you're there. Right. At some point in time in your life, you're always like, this is the worst. I'm never going to make it through this. Yeah. Oh my God, my boyfriend broke up with me, whatever.
Right. Yep.
And I firmly believe, had it not been, and I told you this the other day, I am thankful that my brother died because I wouldn't be me and have the opportunities that I have to help others and to share his story and to grow and build my family in a way that is going to help the world through each one of their individual contacts as they grow without his death. And what I traded tomorrow for another hour. Yes. Yeah. But it doesn't mean I'm not thankful.
Right. That's an and, not a or.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And having that, it's 31 years since my brother died. July, I'll be 32. And the fact that I can sit here and look at his picture and cry is no longer something I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
It's what I lean into.
Yeah. And this is where I get getting chills right now. Like what, Andy was permission for others.
Yeah.
You sharing your story of Andy and your memories and getting choked up is giving permission to others.
Yeah.
I really believe that this whole existence, that we're here to just give the next person permission to be. I grew up, it was just a chaotic, insane mess, but a controlled psyop to the outside world. But I had a disdain for everyone that thought they were cool because they didn't know what I was going through, and they all, and I've since learned that no one's cool. No one's cool. I've been award-winning this and that. You did. So who cares? Like, it doesn't mean a thing. It's like, are we loving? Are we creating space for other people to feel safe? Like, instead of this bravado, and it's like, I just was with some guys this weekend at a men's retreat, and like, there's always a tougher, smarter, stronger, richer, whatever. There's always more of that. You know who wins the game? Those that can go lowest and be the bottom to contain and hold that space for people and say, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be strong and sensitive. It's okay to be bold and quiet. It's okay, whatever it is. It's this and world that we have had robbed from us, I think, for so long, because it's either you're this or that. You either, you're strong or you're weak. You can be strong and weak. It's just choosing when, what is weakness, I guess. But I'm just saying that it's beautiful for you to share the story and share vulnerability. Vulnerability is strength.
I agree. I think we live in a world, having done the profession I've done for so long and seeing how the behind the curtains of a lot of different families, and just seeing the world evolve since, I've been a cop since 1993, and just understanding how labels and how our society wants everyone to be in a box. And I wrote a couple programs for, mentorship and anti-bullying stuff in the past, and have pitched them to schools. But what I end up doing is offending everybody that works within this education system, because they're participating in a hoax. And I'm like, you tell me that you're an inclusive society in school, but the minute a kid comes in, they got to pick a box.
Yeah, that's right.
You've always got, are you in the college prep box? Are you in the special education box? Are you in the band box? Are you in the sports box? Are you in the key club, Spanish club, whatever box it is? It might be inclusive under the same name school.
Right.
But once you enter the school, you get put into a box. You have to pick a box. And those that pick no box are the ones that end up, chastised and have no home. Right. And I tried to explain that to the school districts. I'm like, listen, we have to stop the boxing. We have to create, if we're going to accept the fact there's going to be different groups, we've got to create a unifier for those groups so that they're all connected at some point in time. So it can't all be you or.
Right.
There's got to be an and.
Yes, right. Yes.
And the program that I wrote was the and.
That's good.
And I said, if you're not willing to accept the fact that what we've been doing is creating a world full of labelers, box makers, who have to create that in order to find their semblance of order, their semblance of home, their semblance of comfort, then we need to change that. And nobody wanted to buy that. Nobody. I got told no by every school district I went to, because it disrupted. And it was an outsider who pointed out their ward, right?
Yeah.
And came up with the solution.
Right.
And that's the, I learned early on how hard it is to push rocks uphill.
Right. Brother, I am so thankful. We met on 120. Yeah, like the inauguration day, and here we are.
I'm crying on your goddamn show.
I freaking love it. I love it. I do. I love it. And obviously we're talking about the audience, size of this podcast, but look, I mean, people are hearing this in Spain, in Germany, in Saudi Arabia, in Mexico and Sweden. Like, people are hearing this story all around the world, and this is a human story. This is not an American story. This is not a white male story. This is human story. And it's the more stories like this that get shared, the more people feel safe enough, especially when they're strong men. This is why I believe that when men heal, the world heals, because who better to take the mask off? It's like to go to the alpha male and say, take your mask off and be vulnerable and talk about. And I told the guys this weekend, I said, if you can't cry, that's an indication that you are not healed. A healed person actually is able to feel and not be blocked off. So crying is a form of healing and an indication of healed process. It's those that can't cry, those that are tough and like, oh, I've been crying fucking years. Like, wow, cool, man. Your soul must be shriveled and dry. Like, I'm not going to you for any advice, so it's really beautiful. And I'm thankful he came on, man. I just love you. And I'd give you the biggest hug. I'm 6'3". I'm a little over that 250 mark this morning. I was like, okay, I got to lose some weight. I got to drop it. And, but I'd give you a huge hug, brother. And just thank you.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
It's, what I've found about podcasting, when anybody asks me about why a podcast and why haven't you monetized your show or whatever the case might be, it's because I truly have no passion for anything other than having great conversations. Yes. And if it turns into anything other than that, it becomes something I'm not passionate about, and I'm not going to do it with any level of consistency or passion. And I love the fact that we're coming at it from the same place.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, who we are as men and fathers and husbands and sons and friends is a microcosm of how we are able to intercommunicate with one another and share and uplift and I think that's what podcasting has done for me. It's allowed me to have those connections with people that I typically may not.
Right.
And share their story, just like you shared mine today, in a way that isn't, and we've talked about this before, that, I've been a guest on 100 and some podcasts, and they're all different and everybody's got their own style, but the ones that I like the best are the ones when we can just sit and talk. And if I'm on a roll or you're on a roll and you just let that, and you feel it's truly worthwhile of it just being let go and just let it go.
Yeah.
Those are the best kinds of shows because someone can connect.
Yes.
And rather than being, I got to get these 10 questions out for the end of the show.
Right.
And I love the fact that this is the type of show you have. And it's a blessing to be able to share time with you. And I'm really thankful that you allowed me to be on.
Same, man. Thank you. That is a blessing to me too. I get chills. It's funny. Most of the conversations I've ever had with anyone, it's the first time I hit record. Like, okay. So people are like, all right, didn't know we were going to go there. I'm like, I didn't either, but that's the beautiful thing. I really believe like God, we're two or more gathered, and Jesus said, we're two or more gathered in my name, which Yeshua, meaning salvation, which means in love. So we're two or more gathered in love. Their love is, and their people can like connect with that. And it's like, there's no distance. This is what I think podcasting, I mean, we're 3,000 miles apart, physically, but we're right next to each other digitally, but energetically, you're right here with me. Like you're actually right. I'm feeling you talking the story. Like, yeah, I could hug you right now and just give you a hug. This is, I think, what the truth is of what we've always been able to access. What we will be able to step into is we impact energetically every person one way or another. We're either creating a void in them or we're filling a void in them. And it's beautiful. And I do believe this, like I was telling, I went to the dentist this morning and I was red pilling I was red pilling the woman working on my teeth. And I said, I do believe we're entering a more beautiful world. I said, it's just slowly people are coming to this place. Like men, I believe in not even categories, men, all humans, but alpha males will be the most sensitive. It's like the elders. You go back, like think of the ancient times, or like movie Avatar. They go to the elder of the tribe or whatever elder, I watched Last of the Mohicans.
Right.
And they go to the elder, and the elder says something completely different than what the one guy wanted. Not anyway, whatever he was, tribe wise, but that's what we're stepping into again. And we haven't had that for a very long time, where you and I are going to be sitting someday and people are like, man, what do you think? Like, well, how's your heart?
Right.
How's your soul? When's the last time you fed your soul? Don't tell me about, let's not worry about what you're going to do. First is, how are you being? Do you need a hug? Do you need to let it rip? You need to let it rip. And anyway, brother, it's just fun. And thank you.
I think it's great because, and not to extend the show any longer, but
that's great.
When people meet us, like, and we were talking earlier on that people have an assumption of who you are. Why do I ask on my podcast, who is Lucas Mack?
Yeah.
It's because who I think Lucas Mack is might be completely different than who you think you are, right? So that's why I asked that question. And people look at me, and there's the group of people that only know me as the author who wrote a really sentimental, emotional book and can cry on stage telling that story. And then there's people that know me as the guy that was on the SWAT team and would, been in shootings and, has no problem throwing down with somebody.
Yeah.
And then there's the guy that people see that is mentoring kids. And like, but nobody looks at me in my package, like the whole package of Mack, which is like so simplistically complex. Like there's no moving parts to me.
Right.
They're all they're there. You just have to look at them. Like there's no mystery behind who I am.
Right.
I'm very open about who I am, but it's funny how when people look at you, they see the person that they connect with.
Yeah.
not necessarily who you are as a person. And I think what we're entering into is that awareness level where people are actually opening their eyes and their hearts to be able to see and feel at the same time. Because typically the head will shut down the heart, or the heart will blind what you're seeing.
Right.
One is overpowering the other. But I think we're going to a space where there's going to be this symbiotic relationship between the two.
It's awesome. I'm excited about it. So how can people follow you? You have an amazing podcast, two dates and a dash, which I was honored to be on, but yeah, just please, brother, share where we can follow you and support you.
Easiest way, I got kicked off social media for politics. So right now I'm only on LinkedIn and Instagram, under Mack Cubbler, but someday maybe I'll be back on Facebook, but and YouTube. I have my YouTube page, Mack Cubbler, but the easiest way to get a hold of me and to find anything out about me is mackcubbler.com.
Okay. And your book's on Amazon, or you can buy
it on Amazon. You can order it from the website. You can order it on Amazon directly.
Okay.
Comes in Kindle, softback, and hardback. And I did make the top 100 after 14 years, which is a total scam, but top 100 in the books of individuals with disabilities.
Wow.
Top 100.
Congratulations.
So,
Congratulations.
After 14.
Amazing. Well, thank you, brother. I love you, man. I can't wait to talk. I can't wait to meet in person. That's going to be an epic day.
Dude, I gotta come out and Aaron got to get together.
Yes. It's good. Thanks, brother. Well, I hope you all enjoyed. Again, go to mackcubbler.com. I'll put that link in the show notes and look at his site. His site summarizes who he is, a very diverse and wide array individual who has a beautiful heart and a beautiful soul, and is standing for the betterment of all. And I'm excited that he got to share his story here in Andy's story as well. So blessings to you all. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining this journey of becoming a golden rule revolutionary, making a more positive impact in the world, to receive the love of God so that we can love others, be the permission for others to heal, be the permission for others to take their masks off and become vulnerable, and receive the love that we all have sought our entire lives. It's available now. I bless you all. Thank you for watching. I'm Lucas Mack. This is the Golden Rule Revolution, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for listening. For support in your journey, go to my website, lucasmack.com.